I'm pulling up the the Google Slides from today's additional resources. It just takes a minute. What's today's date? 26? All right, so before we go to finding missing angles, I do just want to quickly review how to find the missing side. So let's draw those real quick. All right, so remember we used SOHCAHTOA to help us find our missing sides. So we generally write it some old hippie and make the O and the H a fraction because that's the fraction we use for sine. Caught another hippie tripping on angles. Okay? So the first thing that is good for you to look at is identify what sides you're given according to the angle. Okay, so the hypotenuse, we already know it's across from the right angle, so we have the hypotenuse on number 1. If it was the opposite side labeled, it would be directly across, so we don't have that. X is part of one of the sides that connects to our angle of 28. So this is the adjacent. So we have an H and an A. And then we look and see which fraction has the H and the A. And so here it's cosine of A over H. So then we can set that up. The cosine of 28 equals our adjacent side, which is X, over our hypotenuse side, which is 13. And to solve for X, this is an equation. So we have a number in the denominator. We got to multiply it out. So we're going to say, to get X, we're going to do the cosine of 28 times 13. I just wanted to review this before we move on. Okay, so whichever Desmos you use, if you've changed it to degrees, you're good now. You only have to do that once. I'm typing the word cosine. Wonder if you could do that. You can? All right, cosine of 28 times 13. And round to the 10th. So this would round to what? 11.5. Awesome. Okay. Now, number 2, same thing. So we are going to label the sides that are written here, the 17 and the x, according to our angle, 15 degrees. So we do have the hypotenuse again. Did I do the exact same thing? I did. Hey, just for this example, mark that out and put 17 over here, just to give you something different. Okay, so now the 17 is opposite of the angle. So this is O. So which function has O and H? Sine. So this is sine, or we're going to do O over H. So the sine of 15 equals the opposite, which is 17 over x. And this time, because x is in your denominator, we solved this out Friday in our notes, but what we found a pattern was just to switch x and the sine of 15. So x equals 17 over the sine of 15. So that's 17 over sine of 15. And you get 65.7. Is that what you got? Yeah. Oh, wait, that's kind of big, but that's the answer. All right, do you feel like we need to do more of those, or are you good on it? Good. Sanaya, you good? Okay. So if you pull up the PowerPoint, we're on the very end, so there's just 6 examples that we're going to do. I have a copy of it, so I'm just going to draw. Okay, but now we're going to use inverse trig ratios to find missing angles. So just write this little sentence right here for me in our notes, and then we'll do the examples. If you know the sine, cosine, or tangent ratio of an angle, you can use the inverse functions. Go ahead and draw out those 2 examples. So what we wrote down, if you know the sine, cosine, or tangent ratio of an angle, you can use the inverse function, which in the parentheses, that's what they look like: sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, tan to the -1, to find the measure of the angle. So pretty much what you need to know is when we're trying to find an angle, I'm going to show you the process of finding it, but instead of hitting sine on Desmos, you're going to hit the inverse of sine. And you should see those buttons in the function part of the keypad. I'll show you as we do these examples. Okay, so same thing on these. So we're going to look at what sides we have according to the angle. Okay, so what's labeled? What is 24? Is that the opposite, hypotenuse, or adjacent side? It's across from the 90-degree angle, so this is the hypotenuse. What is 15? Opposite, right? So it's opposite of x. So which trig function has O and H? Sine. So this is sine function. So we're going to write it out exactly like we normally would. We have the sine of, but instead of the angle measure, we have x, because we're going to try to find the angle. And that equals the opposite side, which is 15, over the hypotenuse, which is 24. What's great about finding the angles is you only have one angle option that you're finding, so there's not multiple ways to do this. They're all going to be the same. So once you have this, remember this fraction 15 over 24. We're going to go to Desmos or our calculator. And I'm going to go to functions. And instead of hitting sine, I'm going to hit the inverse of sine. And in the parentheses, we just put that fraction. And you're done. So our angle measure, we're rounding to the 10th. So because of the 8 after the 6, this will bump up to 38.7. Okay, that wasn't too bad, was it? It's just still the most important thing is knowing if you're using sine, cosine, or tangent. So on number 2, I'm looking where my angle is, x. Okay, 11, that is the hypotenuse. It's across from the 90-degree angle, so I'm going to label it h. 8 is right beside of x, so this is the adjacent side. Which trig function uses an a and a h? Thank you, cosine. So we're going to say the cosine of our angle x equals our adjacent, which is 8, over our hypotenuse, which is 11. So 8 over 11, so we're going to go to Desmos. And this was cosine, so don't press cosine. We're doing the inverse because we're finding an angle. And you do 8 over 11. And we get 43.3. And I'm about to give you some to practice because there's nothing different. The only difference is you're going to look and see, are you finding a side? So is the x, in the side place, or is it in the angle? And if it's a side, then we do what we did earlier in the review. If it's an angle, then you use the inverse, okay? Let me make sure this scientific calculator, did y'all find the inverses if you're using this? Right here? Okay, so there they are. Perfect. All right, let me draw, I have 4 little examples that I'm going to have you practice. And then we'll get to the practice in Canvas. All right, so I want you to work through those 4 problems. Definitely work with somebody, compare answers as you get them. Ask your neighbor, hey, did you get this? All right, I went ahead and put the answers up here, so check them. Let me know if you have any questions. Is anybody using a graphing calculator? Do you know how to use it? You know where you figured it out? Good. Any questions on those? All right, let's get to the practice then. I will say, and before I cut my video off for my online kiddos, don't forget there is a Delta Math. It's not due till May 7th, but you should be able to do all of it now that you've seen this lesson.